Let's talk about developing a topic for your expository speech. The most important thing to remember when developing a topic for Expos is that your primary job is to entertain. You cannot be dry and boring and purely informative in an Expos speech. You are not a Wikipedia entry that is just regurgitating every single fact. The heart of finding a good topic is finding one that will be really intriguing and humorous and unexpected and dramatic and entertaining, that will go beyond just the obvious information that everyone probably already knows about your topic. So when you're choosing a topic, you want to keep eyes and ears out for those really awesome tidbits, those aspects that you think could actually be transformed into an entertaining speech. Now, it's really hard to provide hard and fast rules when it comes to expository speaking. Why? Because almost every topic could probably be made interesting, and I have been proven wrong so many times. For instance, I thought the speech on glasses would never ever work. I thought it would just be totally boring, and then it was transformed into a successful expository speech that attended the state tournament. So here are some things that I think you need to consider, though, and be on the lookout when choosing an Expos topic. Even though almost any topic can probably be made great, there are certain strategies to make sure that your topic will meet all of the criteria of a successful speech. So, my first tip is you need to make sure your speech is impactful and meaningful. Now, what does that mean? Functionally, has your topic affected society, history, culture in a meaningful way? Objects in and of themselves are not interesting, but they become interesting if you can make clear claims about their impacts on humanity. Let's give a concrete example. Coffee. So an absolutely boring Expos speech on coffee would just describe the different types of coffee beans and the process for growing and producing coffee, and that could easily take 10 minutes. It's a complicated process, right? How they're grown, where they're sent, how it's brewed. But even coffee lovers would probably be bored to tears. The only people that would find that speech interesting are people who are specializing in the business of coffee and are looking for that intricate level of details. But one important thing to remember is that most of the people in your audience will not be experts on your topic, and so if you go to that level of minute detail, it will be really boring. A better version of that speech would pick up on the claim that's made in the History of the World in Six Glasses. It's an awesome book that I recommend everybody read. Maybe not for this class, but it's a good book. And it makes a fascinating claim in that book. One chapter is on coffee, and it argues that coffee was actually the epitome of modernity and the Enlightenment movement in the 1700s. And it argues that for the first time in European societies around that time period, people started drinking coffee, and it was safe to drink because it used boiling water. The alternative at that time, because they didn't just have clean drinking water like we do now, was basically diluted wine and beer. And you can see why that probably wasn't a great alternative, right? For most of human civilization, people hydrated themselves by drinking diluted beer. The issue is people are then inebriated, right? They're slightly intoxicated, which doesn't lend itself well for deep thought. And so as such, as society started to shift towards coffee, this book argues that it greatly facilitated the transformation of society away from superstition to one focused on science, intellectual endeavors, and political debate. For the first time, people were actually sober, and they had a drink that actually helps you to focus on work. So it was during this period when coffee became a popular drink in Europe that the biggest scientific discoveries and technological improvements were being made. And so this book argues that in many ways, coffee made the Enlightenment possible. Now that's interesting because it's actually impactful. It's showing that coffee, this thing that we probably don't think much about beyond just drinking it in the morning on our way to work, actually had a profound impact on the course of human history, or at least European and Western history. So that's an example of trying to find an impactful or meaningful aspect to your speech. Does the topic you're contemplating actually, has it had an impact on human history or on human culture, society, etc.? Second, I think another really good criteria is to make sure that there are aspects of your topic that are unexpected, that are surprising. If you just give well-known facts about your topic, your audience will feel incredibly bored, right? If you were giving a speech on NASA and you talked about the landing on the moon, obviously that'd probably be something that you have to cover, but it wouldn't be anything that the audience doesn't already know about. And so they'd probably get bored if all you were talking about was the obvious things that they already know. So the heart of a great topic is that most of what you communicate to your audience is actually new to them. That will keep them engaged, right? They've done research on this, and people are much more engaged when you open up gaps in their knowledge. You show them that they don't know certain things, and then they become more interested in wanting to find out or to fill that gap. And so you do that through unexpected and surprising aspects. That element of surprise, I think, really helps to keep an audience engaged with your speech. So let's take a look an example of this. This is a Bellarmine speaker's Expos speech, Ronan McReynolds, his speech on intelligence. And he was a 2-time state champion. He won the state championship tournament twice in Expos. So it's a powerful example. And the opening of his speech on intelligence showed that SAT scores are not correlated with people that we consider geniuses. And so let's take a look. He says 3 people took the SAT. One of them gets a 1280, one of them gets a 2100, and the third one gets a 2260. Who is the smartest individual? Of course, we would think that the one with the highest score, the 2260, would. But then he showed that the one who got the 1280 was the Pulitzer Prize winning author William Faulkner, who's considered one of the greatest American authors. The 2100 was Steve Jobs, who obviously many people would hold in incredible high regard. And the 2260 was Kesha. Interesting, right? Right off the bat, Ronan has surprised the audience by undermining the basic idea that we have that smarter people do better on the SAT. He has just showed us multiple smart people who didn't score as high as a pop singer Kesha. So Expos is all about delivering lots of surprising and unexpected facts in an organized way. Here's another good paragraph from Ronan's speech, and look at all of the awesome little tidbits he packs into such a condensed paragraph. He says, although intelligence can be found in many religions, it has been shown to have a negative correlation with it. Studies have shown that countries with higher rates of atheism are more likely to have higher average IQs than religious countries. Wow, that's interesting, right? People probably didn't immediately think that correlations with religion or rates of religion were correlated with rates of intelligence. Then he says, wow, that sucks for the Vatican. Haha. Speaking of the average intelligence of countries, here in America, we are 9th on the list for overall intelligence. Okay, again, kind of an interesting tidbit, but look at how he makes it more interesting. Which doesn't sound terrible until you realize there are 22 countries tied for 1st through 8. We're behind Iceland. So fascinating, right? Where in 1998, around 55% of the population openly admitted to believing in elves. Elves. So you can see there, Ronan packed in a ton of fascinating little tidbits. First, the correlation between rates of religion and rates of intelligence. Second, where America kind of stands in the world and how even though we look like we're 9th, it's actually much lower than it seems. And third, that we're behind a country where over half the population believes in elves. So all really interesting tidbits. Another good example is from the glasses speech that I mentioned. This speaker talked about carrots, the myth that if you eat carrots, your vision will improve. He showed that actually that has no scientific basis. Yeah, vegetables maybe sort of help with your eyesight, but that myth about carrots was based on the British trying to mask their new radar technology from the Germans during World War II. So they spread a lie about why their aim was getting so much better with their fighter jets, so that the Germans wouldn't suspect that they had new technology. Third, accessibility. You need a topic that an audience of adults could care about. So if your topic is only entertaining to teenagers, if it's not really accessible to adults in the way that it is to you, then it probably won't be a great topic. So sorry, video games are probably not a good topic. Yeah, video games are getting more ubiquitous, but the reality is that many adults just don't care about video games. So even if I would find that speech fascinating, and most of your peers in the class would find that speech fascinating, it will just limit you in front of most audiences. Other times people want to do a topic that they're super nerdy about and obsessed with, but that is often a very technical topic. Again, this might be like computer gadgetry or like internet aspects, and those probably won't be great topics because if it couldn't conceivably interest the average person, then it probably won't be a great topic. And the most important thing to remember is the average person is not a 14-year-old boy. The average person is probably a lot more similar to your parents. Fourth, dramatic implications. Today, most Expos speeches have a dramatic moment. Probably about 10 years ago, Expos speeches used to be just purely lighthearted, purely about jokes and funny tidbits and shocking facts. But now almost every Expos has a moment where they get a little more serious and heavy and show that there's a more dramatic aspect to the topic than one might normally think. And I think that's important, right? It brings the audience to a more emotional place, and it shows them that there's a more somber aspect to your speech. So what are some examples of this? A Bellarmine speaker who finaled at the state tournament in Expos gave a speech on diamonds, and his dramatic implication was that our obsession with diamonds actually has a darker side to it, the blood diamond trade. And blood diamonds are those diamonds that are mined typically in Africa, which leads to a lot of people being abused and killed, and the money that is made from those blood diamonds is typically funding warlords or insurgencies that are perpetuating violence. So it showed that there's actually a lot of blood, figuratively, on those diamonds. So that's a more serious moment. In Ronan's intelligence speech, he talked about the way in which we don't view certain people who have some kind of mental disability or are immigrants as being fully intelligent, despite the fact that they are intelligent in their own unique way. Glasses, that speech talked about one company that owned 80% of the major brands of glasses, and therefore they get to set the price of glasses. And due to this monopoly, many people who need glasses in the developing world cannot afford them. And so more than 1 billion people, including tens of millions of children, thus do not have access to glasses just due to corporate greed. So those are the types of moments that will sit with a judge and make them say, wow, I didn't realize this speech had that dramatic of an aspect. It's a more serious, somber, weighty moment that emotionally resonates with a judge and goes beyond kind of the joke cracking and surprising facts that is typically throughout the rest of an Expos speech. So you'll definitely want to make sure and start brainstorming that your topic that you're contemplating has that dramatic component to it. Fifth, make sure you have some personal connection to the topic. I'm not saying that absolutely, like, if you want to give a speech on glasses, for instance, you don't necessarily have to have glasses, but you should have some reason why you're passionate about the topic and why you have a strong desire to research it. If you don't have a strong passion for your topic, Expos will be a painful experience, not just for you researching and writing your speech, but also for the audience once you eventually start giving it. So you absolutely want to make sure that your topic is something that you yourself would be excited about researching and becoming an expert in. Sixth, don't do an original advocacy or an OO if you're doing an Expos speech. I see this sometimes. Sometimes people try to craft a speech around some sort of political or governmental topic or some sort of problem mindset, and they almost start providing solutions. Right? Almost all the time, those would be better as OAs and OOs. I had a student who really wanted to do a topic on net neutrality, which is fundamentally about government policy relating to the freedom of the internet. And ultimately, it became clear that he basically wanted to give an OA speech defending net neutrality as good policy. If you're doing that type of infomercial, doing a pitch for some sort of solution or policy, then you're in the wrong speech event, right? It just won't lend itself well. It's too technical, it's too political, it's too policy-oriented, rather than being a broader topic that you will inform in an entertaining way an audience about. And my kind of final piece of advice, I don't know if this is necessarily a criteria so much as just what all of these hopefully work towards. The ideal that you want to get towards with Expos is to get to a place where you are making a clear argument about your topic's importance. Instead of just saying, and today I'm giving a speech on coffee. Instead, you almost want to get your speech to a place where you have a thesis statement, where coffee reveals how our society desires and obsesses over productivity. That would be an interesting thesis that you could flesh out in so many different ways. Some other examples I've seen, I saw a speech on hairstyles, and the argument of that speech was not, hey, let's just look at various hairstyles and how funny they are. It actually argued that hairstyles reveal a lot about the underlying values of a culture. Diamonds, was very similar, actually. It represents what our society deems to be valuable in a monetary way. Another speech I saw on labels argued that labels reveal the human tendency to categorize and understand our world. And so those are the types of interesting claims that help to structure a speech and help to have everything else that I talked about fall into place. So, okay, I just gave you a lot of pieces of advice for the good criteria for a good Expos topic. How do you get there? So hopefully, right, you were drawn to Expos because you already had some ideas of the types of topics that you would want to speak on. And so what I would suggest doing is create a list of the topics that you're potentially interested in. And then first, try to find a book on that topic. Here are some good examples. Like I mentioned above, History of the World in 6 Glasses, right? That would be a great source for a topic like coffee. It provides 2 full chapters talking about the importance of coffee, its development, its history, and its impact on human society. Another one I've seen, I haven't actually read this one, but I glance at it, Gretchen Henderson's Ugliness, A Cultural History. Clearly that book is going to go into depth on the concept of ugliness, where it comes from, how it's transformed, and the impact that that concept has had on human society. That'll be way more interesting and have a lot more details and depth than anything that you could find on Google. Another good example is Bill Bryson's The Mother Tongue, English and How It Got That Way. And this book is chock full of the development of the English language and has so many interesting facts about what makes English so unique as a language compared to other languages, and really cool arguments about the impact it's had, not just on our society, but on the world. So those are the types of books that if you find that, you found a gold mine, because they'll go so much deeper than anything else that you would find, and they will almost always be making a larger point about your topic, which will help you to brainstorm a core thesis for your speech. Moreover, it'll just provide you so many ideas about the different types of aspects that you could talk about as it pertains to your topic. So if you can find a book like that on a topic, that's a good sign you're moving in the right direction. The second thing I would do is do broader searches, finding things on Google or Wikipedia. Again, that's not the gold mine, but it's useful because you're scavenging the internet for lots of different things. And you got to think about yourself as almost a scavenger. You are scouring the internet for any little tidbits that you could potentially construct into a good speech. It's not like OA and Extemp where I can point you to the exact sources that yield good results. It's not like go to the New York Times and you'll find an article that speaks about the nature of gun control and the political debate there, right? It's not that easy. But I think you're looking for 2 types of sources when you go to Google or Wikipedia. The first are sources that provide a lot of breadth about a topic. So you're looking for a bird's eye view that will provide you lots of different types of information, right? That's where something like Wikipedia is great. Wikipedia will not be the source that you use, but what Wikipedia does is it provides a nice bird's eye view of different aspects of your topic, and they'll have lots of links at the bottom in their footnotes that you can start to research lots of things about your topic. So that's good. And second, you want to look for sources that provide more depth. So obviously a book is the light upon the hill that you're looking for. But oftentimes you might be able to find long-form articles on The Atlantic or The New Yorker, for instance, that make unique arguments about your topic and go into greater depth than, just your standard article. But hopefully you'll find that researching an Expos should be a lot like performing an Expos speech. It should be a lot of fun. You're looking for fun, entertaining aspects. So this isn't the boring, dry work of an extemper or an original advocate who is looking to construct an intellectual argument about government policy or inform you about current events. You're trying to be humorous and engaging and charismatic and fun. And so your job, right, you always have to remember that your job is not to be a Wikipedia entry. You're not just providing information for the sake of giving information. Your job is to entertain and shock and impact an audience by showing them that this topic that they probably haven't thought much about is a lot more interesting than they realized. You have to think of your primary job as an entertainer and a performer who's going to make a fascinating point, not a dictionary or encyclopedia entry. So the most important thing to remember when researching a topic is to not be boring. If everything on a topic that you're researching would bore you, then I can assure you that it will bore your audience. So hopefully this has provided some good tidbits of information. Hopefully this will help to provide you some direction. I hope you have fun researching your topic, and if you have any other questions as it pertains to developing a topic for Expos, feel free to reach out.